Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I always thought New York City would feel like a movie the moment I stepped into it. Growing up in Gothenburg, Sweden, I used to watch American films late into the night. Those glowing skylines, the fast-talking locals, the endless taxis, and the promise that something extraordinary could happen on every corner. For years I kept telling myself, one day I'll go there. One day I'll see it with my own eyes. That day finally came in the spring of 2018. I had saved for almost 2 years, working double shifts at a small cafe and tutoring English for teenagers. My mom was worried about me traveling alone, but I was 24, restless, and eager to finally live my dream. The flight from Stockholm to New York was exhausting, 9 hours in a cramped seat. But when the plane dipped and the skyline came into view, my fatigue melted away. The Empire State Building, the clustered towers of Manhattan, the faint trace of the Statue of Liberty in the distance, it looked unreal. I pressed my face to the window like a child. "First time in the States?" the older woman sitting next to me asked. "Yes," I said, unable to hide my grin. "It's surreal." She smiled politely, then went back to her magazine. For me, though, it was impossible to calm down. LaGuardia was chaos, voices in dozens of languages, luggage carts squeaking, people rushing in every direction. I clutched my backpack to my chest, keeping my passport tucked in a side pocket, just like my dad had told me on the phone before I left. "Always keep your documents on you. Don't let them out of sight, Clara." I had booked a cheap hostel in Queens. I couldn't afford the fancy hotels downtown, but the online reviews said it was safe enough, just noisy at night. That didn't bother me. I was too excited. Outside the terminal, a line of yellow cabs gleamed beneath the hazy evening sky, just like in the movies. I laughed to myself, dragging my suitcase toward the line. "Taxi?" A tall man in a cap waved me over. "Yes, please," I said, my voice bright. He loaded my bag into the trunk and opened the door for me. "Where to?" I climbed inside, heart racing. "Queens. I can give you the address." I pulled up the confirmation email on my phone. As we pulled out of the airport, the driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "You visiting?" "Yes, from Sweden." "Sweden, huh? Never heard of it." I chuckled awkwardly, assuming he was joking. But his face stayed expressionless. No smile, no curiosity, just a blank stare that lingered a little too long before he looked back at the road. Something in my stomach tightened, but then the city appeared in full view. The skyline lit up against the fading light, the streets buzzing with people, and I forgot my unease for a moment. "Wow," I whispered, pressing my forehead to the glass. "It's even better than I imagined." The driver didn't respond. At the first traffic light, he tapped the steering wheel. Then, without warning, he made a sharp left turn, cutting across traffic. Was that the right way?" I asked, my voice uncertain. No answer. The cab accelerated, weaving through side streets. "Excuse me?" "My hostel's in Queens, right? You're going the wrong way." Still no answer. Panic stirred in my chest. I reached for my phone, but before I could unlock it, he pulled into a narrow alley and slammed the car into park. "Hey, what are you doing?" He turned, holding a small spray bottle. A mist of something cold and chemical burst across my face. I gasped, choking. My eyes burned, my throat closed, and the world tilted violently. His blank face was the last thing I saw before everything went dark. When I woke up, the air felt damp and smelled of mold. My head throbbed. It took a moment to realize I couldn't move. My wrists and ankles were bound by cold metal chains to the corners of a filthy bed. "No, no, no." My voice broke into sobs. The room looked like a basement apartment, the walls peeling, a single flickering bulb above, a boarded-up window. I screamed for help until my throat went raw, but the walls swallowed the sound. Footsteps echoed outside. A lock clicked. Please, please help me. The door opened. I held my breath, expecting the driver, but it wasn't him. It was a little girl, maybe 9 or 10, holding a tray of food. Her hair was tangled into dirty dreadlocks, her face smudged with grime. She stared at me with wide, glassy blue eyes as she set the tray on the nightstand. "Sweetheart," I begged, tears spilling down my face. "Please call the police. I'm not supposed to be here. That man, he kidnapped me." She tilted her head. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because Mommy and Daddy want to have fun with you." My blood turned to ice. What did you just say?" The girl blinked, then ran out of the room, shutting the door behind her like nothing was wrong. I broke down, sobbing so hard my chest hurt. God, no, no, no. Minutes later, the door burst open again. A woman walked in. Her clothes were filthy, layers of mismatched fabric. Her eyes glittered with something feral. She carried a hunk of bread which she shoved into my mouth as I gagged. "Come on, little birdie," she crooned. "Don't give up so soon. We're just getting started." The driver stepped in behind her. She laughed and leaned into his chest as his arms wrapped around her waist. They looked at me like I was a painting, something to admire. "My dad will find you," I choked out. "The cameras. They'll have your car's number plate. You can't get away with this." They exchanged a knowing smile. The woman leaned close, her breath sour on my face. "Do you think we're that stupid? Cameron always changes the plates before we hunt. You're not the first girl." She punched me hard in the eye. Pain exploded through my skull. Blood filled my mouth. Their laughter rang in my ears as they left the room, locking the door. I curled up, shaking, my hope collapsing. Through the thin walls, I heard the woman's voice. "We'll be back soon, baby girl. Keep an eye on her." "Yes, Mommy," the child's voice replied sweetly. "Just like I did with Lucy." I froze. Lucy? My chest heaved. Dear God, how many others? Later, the girl slipped back in, quiet as a shadow. She studied me, her dirty fingers brushing the locket around my neck. "I love this," she whispered. "What is it?" "My mom gave it to me," I said, seizing the only chance I had. "When I was your age. Do you want it?" Her eyes widened. She nodded. "Okay," I said softly. "But I can't take it off with my hands tied. You'll have to untie me." She hesitated, then glanced toward the door. Mommy said, "Do you want it or not?" I pressed gently. She bit her lip, then reached up and unfastened the chains from my wrists. The moment I was free, I lunged. In a frenzy, I grabbed her small arms, looped the chains around them, and fastened her to the bed. She didn't scream, didn't struggle, just watched me with those glassy eyes. I freed my ankles, my heart pounding. At the door, I turned back. She was smiling. "You're the first one to get out," she whispered. I bolted into the hall. The stench of rot guided me to a stairwell. My bare feet pounded on the concrete, my breath ragged. At the top, a heavy door, unlocked. I shoved it open and stumbled into the night. The streets were empty, the building a decrepit row house in a forgotten corner of Queens. I ran until I collapsed in front of a corner store, screaming for help. The police came. They found me bloodied, shaking, in torn clothes. I led them back to the house. But the family was gone. What they did find made every officer pale. 5 bodies of young women hidden in the attic. Tourists, like me. Girls who had come to New York chasing dreams and ended up trapped in a nightmare. The news covered it for weeks, but the couple, Cameron and Elise, as I learned later, were never found. Nor was the little girl. I still wake at night hearing her voice. "You're the first one to get out." Sometimes I wonder if she let me, and if so, why? Maybe she wanted me to tell this story. Maybe she wanted me to remember her, or maybe she's still out there waiting for the next yellow cab to pull away from LaGuardia. I never imagined that moving to New York would end this way. When I first packed my bags in Ohio, I thought I was chasing opportunity, not walking straight into a nightmare. My hometown of Fairview was the kind of place where everybody knew everyone else, where nothing changed except the weather. I had spent 27 years there, living under the same roof my parents bought before I was even born. My father had retired after 35 years at a steel plant. My mother still worked at the local library, and I felt stuck. I'd always been the quiet kid, artistic, observant. Drawing had been my escape since childhood, so naturally I pursued design. After graduating, I bounced between freelance projects until one day I got an email. A Manhattan-based firm wanted to bring me in as a junior graphic designer. It wasn't the dream job, but it was a door opening. When I told my parents, my mother cried, and my father grunted in his usual way before saying, "New York'll eat you alive, Danny." "But maybe that's what you need, Uncle Frank," my dad's younger brother offered to help me move. He had an old box truck he used for construction jobs, and he insisted on driving with me to make sure some big city scam artist doesn't rob you blind. We left Ohio on a Friday afternoon and drove through the night, stopping only for gas and greasy food. By dawn Saturday, we rolled into Queens, where my new apartment was waiting. It wasn't glamorous, nothing like the glossy Manhattan studios I had seen online. But at $1,150 a month for a one-bedroom in a brownstone on West Huron Street, it was a steal by New York standards. The building was old but sturdy, with a faded brick facade and wrought iron railings. I had been nervous about crime, but the neighborhood seemed relatively quiet. Families pushed strollers down the block, corner bodegas buzzed with life, and the air smelled faintly of bagels and car exhaust. Frank parked the truck by the curb and slapped the wheel. "Well, here it is." "Your palace," I laughed, though my stomach fluttered. We started unloading boxes when I heard a voice. "Hey, you just moving in?" I turned and saw a young woman standing on the sidewalk. She had long, dark hair tucked into a faded scarf, pale skin, and eyes that seemed to watch too closely. But what unsettled me most was her smile. Polite, yes, but too still, as if it had been painted on. Yeah," I said, balancing a table against my hip. "Just moved in today." "I'm Daniel." I reached out a hand. She didn't take it. Her smile stayed frozen. "You're from the apartment upstairs, right? Do you need help?" Frank muttered under his breath. "Lot of weirdos here," and walked past with a box. I forced a smile. "No, thank you. We're just about finished." She tilted her head. "You'll be very happy here." And then she walked away. No goodbye, no wave, just gone. By afternoon, Frank hugged me goodbye, gave his usual, "Don't do anything stupid," and drove the truck back to Ohio. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone in a new city. I spent hours arranging boxes, setting up my mattress, and stocking the kitchen with a few essentials. By evening, exhaustion washed over me. I collapsed on the bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the muted hum of New York life through the thin walls. After a while, I stood and opened the window. The cool September air drifted in. Down below, the street glowed under yellow lamps. People walked dogs, carried groceries, laughed with friends. Then I froze. Across the street, the girl from earlier was standing on the sidewalk looking up directly at me. She wasn't walking. She wasn't talking. She was just staring, still smiling. I raised my hand in a small wave. She didn't move. I closed the window and shut the curtain. The next morning, I went grocery shopping at a nearby market. I wanted to pretend the night before hadn't happened. Inside, I queued behind a man in a gray coat with thinning hair. He turned suddenly and said, "Nice day, isn't it?" "Yeah," I replied, caught off guard. "You seem surprised?" I chuckled awkwardly. "Sorry, I just moved here. Didn't expect strangers to be this friendly." The man's lips curled, but his eyes stayed flat. "Don't get your hopes up. People here aren't friendly. Only we are." Something about his tone chilled me. "We?" I asked. but he turned back without answering. When the cashier called me, I rushed to pay. As I gathered my bags, I glanced back. He was still staring at me. Back at the apartment, I put food away, but his words gnawed at me. Only we are. I lifted the curtain. My heart dropped. The man in the gray coat stood near the lamppost. The girl was there too, scarf framing her face. 2 more strangers flanked them. All of them stared at my window, all of them smiling. I let the curtain fall and stumbled backward. Over the next week, it grew worse. Each time I dared to look outside, more of them were there. Different faces, young, old, men, women, but the same unblinking stares, the same 2 gentle smiles. And then came the dreams. At first, they were vague, a shadow with horns at the end of the street. Each night it came closer. Soon I saw it clearly, a towering, goat-headed figure, skeletal, its breath rank and damp. It never spoke. It just stared. I woke each time drenched in sweat. One Tuesday night, I woke not from a dream, but from a sound. The bathroom door was open. I always closed it. Always. From the darkness came heavy, wet breathing. I checked the front door, locked. No one could have entered. I grabbed a kitchen knife and crept forward, every step trembling. The breathing grew louder, damper, almost animalistic. My hand shook as I reached for the light switch. Just as my fingers brushed the wall, hot breath exhaled over them. I flicked the switch. The bathroom was empty. A knock rattled my apartment door. I rushed to open it. No one was there. But carved into the wood was a rough cross. The police shrugged it off. Probably a prank, the officer said, barely looking up from his notepad. Keep your door locked. On the walk home, I heard a voice. You look sad. Do you need help? It was her, the girl. Same scarf, same smile. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed her by the shirt. What do you want from me? Leave me the hell alone. Her smile didn't fade. Don't worry. You're getting closer. Soon you'll be happy. I'll kill you, do you hear me? Sir, let her go, a man shouted. I looked around. A crowd had formed. Dozens of strangers glaring at me. You're hurting her, someone yelled. Before I could explain, fists and boots struck me. I curled on the sidewalk, blood filling my mouth. Through blurred eyes, I saw her calmly step away, smiling as chaos swirled around her. That night, back in my apartment, I collapsed against the wall, ribs aching. Something shifted in my pocket. I reached in and screamed. A blackened hoof, small, shriveled, reeking of rot. I hurled it across the room. Days blurred into nights. The smell grew unbearable, sulfur and decay. My internet cut out. My food dwindled. I stopped leaving. Whenever I peeked outside, dozens, sometimes 50, stood below, staring, smiling. The goat-headed man no longer stayed in dreams. I saw him in shadows reflected in windows, standing in the corner of my vision. His breath followed me everywhere. I called my mother once. When she answered, I couldn't speak. I hung up. I couldn't drag them into this. Now, as I write this, my body feels drained, hollow. My hands shake, my stomach twists, but food doesn't matter anymore. The breathing in the bathroom never stops now. The cross on my door has been carved nearly through the wood. If I vanish, if you never hear from me again, know that they came for me, the girl, the man, the others, the goat-headed figure who waits. I only pray it ends quickly. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to believe in monsters. My name's Adam Reyes, and back in 2014, I was 22, broke, and stuck living in my hometown of Rockwell, New York. Rockwell wasn't the kind of place you moved to. It was the kind of place you left. But I had just graduated from a community college in Syracuse with an associate's degree in business management and no prospects. Rent in the city was too high, and my parents still had a spare room in their place, so I swallowed my pride and came back. I figured it would be temporary. I'd pick up some part-time job, save a little, and get out again. But months went by, and I stayed. Rockwell wasn't much to look at. The downtown strip had maybe 3 functioning businesses: a diner that closed at 8 p.m., a gas station that sold more cigarettes than fuel, and a hardware store run by a guy who'd been threatening to retire for 15 years. The rest of the storefronts were boarded up. The only place that felt remotely alive was the county fairgrounds. Every summer, rides and vendors would roll in, and for a week the town buzzed with color and noise. But when the fair left, it went back to being empty fields, a baseball diamond, and a grandstand that smelled of mildew. When you're 22 and broke, your options for entertainment are limited. My entertainment became walking at night. It was a humid September evening when it happened. I couldn't sleep, so I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my headphones, and set off on foot. As I passed the gas station, Marcus was leaning against his beat-up Honda Civic, lighting a cigarette. "Reyes," he called. "Still doing those night walks?" "Beats lying awake staring at the ceiling," I said. He blew out smoke. "You heading out to the fairgrounds?" "Yeah, why?" He smirked. "Kids been saying they've seen something out there. Some kind of shadow thing. Tall. With horns," I laughed. "So what? Like Bigfoot decided to move to Rockwell?" "I'm just telling you what I heard," he said. "They said it screams." "Kids also say there's an old lady in the woods who steals dogs," I shot back. Marcus shrugged. "Suit yourself. Just don't say I didn't warn you." I waved him off and kept walking. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet where you could hear the hum of a street lamp or the crunch of your own sneakers on gravel. I slipped through a break in the chain-link fence and into the fairgrounds. The air always smelled faintly of rust and cut grass there. I walked the perimeter once, then cut across the field toward the baseball diamond. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a person standing on the pitcher's mound. A tall man, maybe 6'4", shoulders squared, just standing. But something about the stillness was wrong. It wasn't the stillness of someone waiting, it was the stillness of a statue. I froze. "Hey!" I called, my voice cracking in the open space. The figure didn't move. I squinted. The moon was bright enough to outline shapes, and as I focused, I saw its head shift. Not like a tilt, but like it changed shape. 1 second it was rounded, human-like. The next, it elongated, sprouting antlers. My mouth went dry. I took a step back, and that's when it slid forward. Not walked, slid. Like it covered 20 feet without moving its legs. The scream that tore out of it was nothing human. It was metal ripping, glass shattering, every nightmare sound rolled into one. I ran. I don't remember climbing the fence or sprinting down Main Street, only that I didn't stop until I was leaning against a lamppost outside my parents' house, chest heaving, sweat dripping down my back. I didn't tell anyone, not at first. The next morning, I convinced myself it was exhaustion, shadows playing tricks, maybe a deer on the field. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that skull face and those antlers scraping the night sky. By the third day, I broke. I went to Marcus at the gas station. "You remember what you said about the fairgrounds?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah. Why?" I saw it. His smirk faded. "Saw what?" "The thing. On the mound." It screamed. Marcus stubbed out his cigarette. For the first time in years, he looked dead serious. "My cousin Joey swore he saw it too back in July. Said it chased him all the way to his car. I thought he was just drunk. Did he describe it?" Marcus hesitated. "Said it had a skull face. With antlers." My stomach turned. 2 weeks passed. I told myself I wouldn't go back, but insomnia doesn't care about promises. This time I brought a flashlight. The fairgrounds were even emptier than before. Crickets chirped. My beam cut across the field. Nothing. Relief trickled in. I laughed nervously. "You're losing it, Reyes." The flashlight flickered. When it steadied, the figure was there. Closer this time, not on the mound, but halfway between me and it. I froze. My light caught its face. A skull, hollow sockets, antlers that branched wider than I thought possible. It opened its mouth. Not a scream this time, but whispers. Dozens of them, layered, like a crowd talking at once. I staggered backward, ears ringing. Then one voice cut through the noise. Adam. It knew my name. I ran, flashlight swinging wildly, until I burst out onto the street, lungs burning. After that, I couldn't keep it in. I started asking around quietly. At the diner, I overheard two old men talking. "You hear about the thing at the fairgrounds," one said. The other nodded. "My grandson swears he saw it. Says it's been around since the 70s. Some kind of spirit." Spirit of what? Damn if I know. Maybe something older than the town. At the hardware store, Mrs. Callahan, who'd lived there her whole life, told me in a hushed voice. "My father used to warn us kids not to go out there after dark. Said something walked the fields, something that called your name if you stayed too long." After that, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing scratching at my window at night. My phone would buzz with calls from unknown at 3 a.m., and when I answered, it was just breathing. Marcus told me I was losing it. "You need to get out of this town, man, before it gets worse." But leaving wasn't easy. I had no money, no job lined up anywhere else, and part of me needed to know what it was. It was late October when I went back for the last time. The air was sharp, carrying the smell of dead leaves. I didn't bring a flashlight this time. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, no tricks. The fairgrounds were silent. I stood on the edge of the baseball diamond, heart pounding. At first, nothing, just the empty mound. Then slowly it rose out of the ground itself, like it had always been part of the dirt. Antlers scraped the night sky. Its hollow sockets locked on me. It stepped forward, actually stepped this time, legs moving stiffly. "Adam!" My blood ran cold. I ran, but no matter how fast I went, its voice followed. Not screaming, not whispering, calling. Always calling. By the time I made it home, I was sobbing. I left Rockwell 2 days later, packed a duffel bag, got in my car, and drove until the sun came up. I never went back. But here's the thing. It didn't stay behind. Sometimes walking alone at night in a different town, I feel it. The prickle on the back of my neck, the faint whisper of my name on the wind. I don't think it's bound to Rockwell. I think it's bound to me. And one night, when I'm too tired to run, it'll step out of the shadows again. I was 11 years old when my family uprooted our quiet life in Oregon and moved to New York City. My father, Daniel Hayes, had landed a position with one of the top financial firms in Manhattan. The salary was life-changing, enough that we left behind our small 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of Portland and stepped into a completely different world. My mom, Aiko, and my grandmother, Hana, had always been more comfortable in the rhythm of small towns. They were originally from a village outside Kyoto, Japan, and though we'd lived in the States for years, New York intimidated them in ways I couldn't fully understand at the time. They worried about noise, strangers, crime. I, on the other hand, couldn't wait. At 11, the chaos of the city felt like freedom. We settled in a brownstone apartment in Midtown, close enough that Dad could walk to his office near 47th Street and 6th Avenue. He worked long hours, often coming home long after I was in bed. But he made up for it with little things, taking me out for pizza on Fridays, walking me to school some mornings, and teaching me how to dribble a basketball in the courtyard of our building. My parents enrolled me at St. Andrews, a private school not far from our apartment. It was the kind of place where the kids wore blazers and carried expensive backpacks. I didn't fit in right away. I was shy, a little naive, and nowhere near as grown up as the other kids acted. Still, after a couple of weeks, I made a few friends who lived near me. That gave me enough confidence to stop relying on my parents to pick me up every day. Mom didn't like that. She worried. "Kai, you wait for me," she'd scold in her soft accent. "Don't walk alone. New York is not Oregon." "Mom, it's fine," I'd whine. "Everyone else walks home." "I don't want to be the baby," she'd sigh, brush my hair out of my face and let it go, but not without muttering to Grandma in Japanese about how stubborn I was. It was a Tuesday in late October when everything happened. That morning, Dad had promised we'd go see a Knicks game after his shift. I'd never been to Madison Square Garden before, and I was buzzing with excitement all day. Mom and Grandma had dentist appointments in Queens, so Dad arranged for one of the company drivers to pick me up after school and bring me to his office. When I stepped into his building for the first time, I felt like I'd walked into another world. The lobby ceiling stretched so high it looked like the roof of a cathedral. Polished marble reflected every light, and people in suits hurried past with briefcases and coffee. I clutched my backpack tighter and stared at everything in awe. Dad met me briefly in the lobby before dashing into a meeting upstairs. "Kai, stay inside, okay?" he said, crouching down to my level. 15 minutes, no more. "Here." He pressed a few dollar bills into my hand. "Get a snack from the vending machine and don't go wandering off." "Okay, Dad." He kissed my head, gave me a reassuring smile, and disappeared into the elevator. I headed to the vending machine at the far end of the hallway. Hardly anyone noticed me. Adults were glued to their phones or striding past with determination. I picked a grape soda, popped the can open, and was mid-sip when I felt a light touch on my shoulder. Startled, I spun around, spilling soda down my jeans. "Oh, I'm so sorry, kiddo," a man said quickly. He looked to be in his late 50s, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit with a gleaming watch on his wrist. His gray hair was neatly slicked back, and he smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. Not warm, not genuine, but studied. "It's okay," I mumbled, wiping at my jeans. "Here, let me make it up to you," he said smoothly. "There's an ice cream place across the street." My treat, I shook my head. "No, it's fine." "Come on, don't be shy," he coaxed, lowering his voice. "I know a great game zone too. You like arcade games?" I hesitated. The truth was I did, and I was tired of waiting. He made it sound harmless, even fun. My childish brain reasoned, he looks like everyone else here. He must work in the building too. Dad wouldn't even know I left. "I'll be quick," he said, sensing my hesitation. "Back before your dad's done." Against all better judgment, I followed him. We walked out of the glass doors and he waved at a black Lincoln parked by the curb. The driver pulled up instantly. The man opened the door for me with exaggerated politeness. I slid into the leather seat, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. He climbed in after me. "So what's your name, champ?" he asked, patting my cheek in a way I hated. "Kai," I muttered. "Nice. You can call me Richard," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. At first I thought nothing of it, but as the car turned left, away from the arcade street I'd glimpsed earlier, I frowned. I thought it was just over there." Richard chuckled, leaning closer. "Well, I may have stretched the truth a little. What do you mean?" "Relax," he said softly. His cologne was strong, stinging my nose. "You're safe with me." Something inside me snapped awake. My chest tightened. I shifted toward the door, but his hand closed over mine, firm, cold. "You're okay," he whispered, eyes scanning me in a way that made bile rise in my throat. The car slowed, pulling into a narrow alley. Graffiti stained the walls, dumpsters overflowed with trash, and a homeless woman rummaged silently, not sparing us a glance. Panic clawed at me. Richard suddenly wrapped an arm around my waist, clamping his other hand over my mouth. My muffled screams filled the car. I kicked, squirmed, tears blurring my vision. "Stop fighting. It's okay," he hissed in my ear. But then the driver spoke sharply. "Sir, that's not the one." Richard froze. "What?" "The boss said a red-haired teenager, Spanish kid. This one's not him." My stomach dropped. I wasn't even who they were after. "Damn it," Richard snarled, his grip tightening. "I can't just let him go now." "Sir, you'll be exposed. Shut up." The instant his hand slipped, Instinct took over. I bit down hard on his palm, kicked the door, and bolted into the alley. "Catch him!" Richard screamed. "Don't let him get away!" I sprinted, lungs burning, heart hammering. The sound of footsteps and the rev of the car echoed behind me. Somehow I burst out onto a crowded avenue, nearly colliding with pedestrians. Gasping, I stumbled to the sidewalk and collapsed, sobbing. A police officer on a motorbike spotted me. He pulled up, crouching down. "Hey kid, what's wrong? Where's your parents?" I choked out 3 words. "Dad." "Office. Midtown." Within minutes, I was back at my father's building. Squad cars lined the street, officers swarming the entrance. My mom and dad rushed toward me, both in tears. Mom pulled me into her arms, rocking me. Dad's face was pale with fury and fear. But as I clung to them, I saw him. Richard. He was slipping out of the building across the street, walking quickly toward the same black car. My blood ran cold. "That's him," I screamed, pointing. "That's him, Richard." The cop spun around. Richard froze, eyes meeting mine. Then he bolted. A shot rang out. An officer fired a taser. Richard dropped, writhing on the pavement. "Mr. Langford?" Dad shouted in shock, stepping forward. His voice cracked with disbelief. I looked at him. You know him?" Dad's fists clenched. He's my boss." For a moment, everything blurred. My father lunged at him, rage erupting, punching him square in the face. Cops had to drag Dad back. Richard, Mr. Langford, was cuffed, bleeding, and hauled into a squad car. In the days that followed, everything unraveled. The news exploded with the story. A respected executive arrested on multiple charges of child predation and trafficking. Other boys came forward, 3 of them, each with horror etched into their faces. My mother refused to stay in New York after that. Within a month, we returned to Oregon, and my father quietly resigned from the company. Life went on, but shadows clung to me. Now I'm 26. Ironically, I work in New York again, just blocks from where it all happened. On lunch breaks, I sometimes stand by the vending machine in my own office building, watching strangers rush past. And whenever I see a child alone, wide-eyed and uncertain, I stop. I ask if they're okay. Because I remember too vividly what it was like to be that boy, naive, trusting, almost taken. And I know how many Richards are still out there. I always thought I understood what loneliness was, but New York taught me a different definition. My name is Marcus Hale. I came to the city at 24, suitcase in one hand, cheap guitar case in the other, and the arrogant belief that I'd carve my name into something bigger than the small Pennsylvania town I was running from. That town was little more than diners, shuttered factories, and people waiting to die. My father had already drunk himself into an early grave. My mother lived in her own fog of cigarettes and medication, and I couldn't stand the thought of staying. New York seemed like freedom. I pictured bars full of music, people who understood ambition, late nights that meant something. Instead, I ended up working in a warehouse in Queens. Graveyard shifts, broken back, pay that barely covered rent. The guitar in the corner of my studio gathered dust while I came home every morning to sleep through the daylight, waking to neighbors fighting through thin walls, sirens bleeding through my windows, and the never-ending ache in my chest that maybe I had made the wrong choice. Still, I kept telling myself everyone struggled in New York. That was part of the deal. But lately, these past few weeks, I've felt something heavier. The city doesn't just tire you out. It watches you. It waits. It devours. That October evening was thick with fog, the kind that wraps around streetlights and turns the world into a smear of yellow and gray. I left the warehouse around 2 a.m., shoulders sore, throat dry, and caught the F train back into Manhattan. The subway car rattled half empty, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Across from me, a man in a tattered coat muttered to himself, rocking back and forth, clutching a brown paper bag. At the far end, a woman stared at her phone, eyes dead, scrolling without focus. When the train screeched to a halt at Delancey, I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding harder than it should have from exhaustion. The city above was silent in a way I'd never felt before. No taxis honking, no late-night drunks shouting, no traffic, just fog, heavy, damp, pressing against me like a wet blanket. I told myself it was just another strange New York night. But then I got to my building. The hallway smelled like mildew and old grease. Peeling paint curled like dead skin. My door, number 23, stood slightly ajar. I froze. I never left it unlocked. Not in this neighborhood. "Hello?" I called, voice cracking more than I meant it to. No answer. Just the hum of the fluorescent bulb above me buzzing like a trapped insect. I pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick, sour, metallic, like rust or blood. On the nightstand sat an overturned whiskey bottle, dripping its last drops onto the warped wood. Scattered around it were pills, more than I remembered owning. My breath caught in my throat. I staggered further in. A rat twitched in the corner, frothing at the mouth, convulsing in a small pool of its own blood. It jerked once, twice, then stilled. My stomach lurched. From the bathroom I heard water running. Every nerve screamed at me not to move, but my legs carried me forward anyway. I pushed the door open, heart slamming against my ribs. The shower hissed, steam curling out, but no one was inside. The mirror above the sink was completely black, like someone had painted over it. When I wiped my hand across the glass, it didn't clear. It swallowed my reflection whole. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. And then, 3 knocks echoed from behind me. I spun. The sound hadn't come from the bathroom door, but from somewhere deeper in the apartment. Back in the hallway, I stumbled toward the sound of faint piano music drifting from the right. Slow, melancholic, each note echoing as though underwater. I followed it, pulse hammering. At a door with no number, I pressed my ear close. The piano grew louder, joined by a woman's humming. Soft, angelic. It stopped me cold, calming me for a second. I knocked gently. The music cut off instantly. A chair scraped inside. Footsteps padded toward the door. A woman's voice, delicate, breaking, whispered, "Why are you out of your apartment? It isn't safe out there. The only protection is inside. But it's too late now. He's coming, and there's nothing you can do." My throat tightened. Who? Who's coming? Her sobs bled through the wood. "You'll see. He decides where we go, up above or down below. None of us remember how we got here, Marcus. None of us ever do. But once he comes, there's no running." Before I could speak again, the whole building trembled, walls rattling like a subway car. A metallic hum rose from the floors, like chainsaws grinding steel. The woman screamed, and the hallway lights went out. I ran blindly, the sound of the piano replaced by shrieks from behind doors, men and women wailing in agony. Then, a door to my left burst open. From the darkness stepped a creature, tall and thin, its skin gray as ash. Its 5 black eyes blinked independently, wet and glistening. Its arms ended not in hands but in claws, sharp and curling. Its lipless mouth peeled back to reveal teeth that looked rotten yet strong. It fixed those 5 eyes on me. I froze, unable to breathe. The creature reached out, grabbing my wrist in a vice grip. Pain seared up my arm. Then it spoke. Its voice was deep, resonant, vibrating through my skull. "Marcus, hello? I am your carrier." My legs gave out, but it held me upright. "Do not run. If you come with me willingly, I will not hurt you." I wanted to scream, to yank away, but something in its voice shackled me. I nodded. It released my wrist slowly. What is this place?" I managed to whisper. The carrier tilted its head, 5 eyes blinking. "Some stay longer. Some only minutes. This is not for everyone, but for you. It is time we walk down the endless hallway." At one door, golden light spilled from beneath it. I heard laughter, Children playing, birds chirping, leaves rustling, a world alive. "What's in there?" I asked, pointing with a shaking hand. "Not for you," the carrier said flatly. At another door, screams tore through the wood. Voices begged, wailed, clawed for help. "That," it said, "is where some remain forever." Finally, we stopped before a stairwell. The door read 4355. Beyond it, darkness yawned, endless. The carrier raised a claw toward it. "This is your stop." My chest tightened. "Why?" "Because you made a mistake." My mind raced. What mistake? What did I do? Think. Apartment 23. The bottle, the pills, the mirror with no reflection. I tried to piece it together, breath sharp. Images flashed. The whiskey, the pills, the rat foaming at the mouth, the shower with no one inside. The woman screaming outside about violence, begging to be free. The carrier's voice sliced through me. "Now. Remember." My hands shook as I pulled my phone from my pocket. A message glowed on the screen, written by me but forgotten. To Sarah, "I'm sorry for everything. I hope my absence doesn't burden you. I couldn't take this existence anymore. Please take care of Mom. Goodbye." "No," I whispered. The last audio file on my phone played my own voice, recounting every thought I'd had since I woke up tonight. Every word. "You see," the carrier said, "you are already gone. What walks with me now is only the shadow of what you were." Tears blurred my vision. "Please." I didn't mean it. The carrier's claws pointed to the stairwell. All must go where they belong. The screams from below grew louder, echoing up the stairs. My legs shook. Behind me, the hallway stretched on forever. Doors sealed tight, piano silent, city absent. There was nowhere else. I stepped forward, down into the dark. I never thought my love for hockey and late nights in the city would lead me to one of the scariest experiences of my life. My name is Daniel Rivera. I'm 29 years old, and I live in Newark, New Jersey. I work as a middle school history teacher, which doesn't exactly make me the most adventurous guy, but I've always had this one outlet that makes me feel alive: hockey. Growing up, my dad used to take me to New Jersey Devils games whenever he could afford the tickets. We'd sit in the nosebleeds with hot dogs and sodas, and I remember those nights being the closest thing to magic. After he passed away from a sudden heart attack when I was 19, I started going to games on my own. It made me feel close to him somehow, like if I cheered hard enough, he'd still be there beside me. Now, I usually go to Prudential Center in Newark, but sometimes, when I'm craving the real electric energy of hockey, I take the train into Manhattan to watch the Rangers at Madison Square Garden. It's louder, rowdier, and more expensive, but worth every damn penny when the place erupts after a goal. That's exactly where this story begins. It was a Friday evening in late January. The kind of bitter cold where the wind knifes across your face as soon as you step outside. I had just finished a long week of grading papers and babysitting 8th graders who think TikTok dances are the height of culture. My best friend Kyle was supposed to come with me, but he bailed last minute because his girlfriend wanted to go furniture shopping for their new apartment. "Dude, you're really ditching me for an IKEA date?" I texted him. He replied almost instantly, "Bro, trust me. If I don't go, I'll be sleeping on the couch tonight. You'll survive MSG without me." I rolled my eyes but didn't argue. I'd survived worse things alone. So, I went by myself. Inside the garden, the atmosphere was everything I wanted. Drunk fans in blue jerseys screaming at the refs, overpriced beers spilling onto sticky floors, strangers high-fiving me every time the Rangers scored. For a while, I was happy. I wasn't thinking about lesson plans or loneliness, just hockey, beer, and adrenaline. When the Rangers sealed a 3-2 victory over the Flyers, the crowd roared, and I shouted along until my throat burned. I felt like a kid again, and for that short window of time, life was simple. Leaving the arena, though, reality crept back in. The streets were buzzing with fans spilling out in every direction. Some groups were laughing, some were already arguing about where to get late-night food, and some, predictably, were starting fights with Flyers fans. I pulled my coat tighter, shoved my hands in my pockets, and headed toward a bar a couple blocks away. I told myself one drink wouldn't hurt before catching the train back to Jersey. One turned into two, then three. Then some random guy in a Rangers hat bought me a shot for the win. By the time I left, my head was warm, my legs were a little loose, and the idea of navigating Penn Station felt like walking through a maze blindfolded. I decided to take my time. That's where I made my mistake. Instead of heading straight to Penn, I wandered west, figuring I'd grab the bus home from the Port Authority. It wasn't too far, and it felt easier than dealing with train transfers. The further I walked, the thinner the crowd became. Eventually, I reached the terminal, and the contrast was unsettling. The place was almost empty, the kind of empty that makes your skin itch. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting pale, sickly light across the tiled floor. I remember muttering to myself, "Damn, this place feels like a horror movie set." My footsteps echoed as I pulled out my phone to check the next bus schedule. That's when it happened. A sudden shove from behind. My knees slammed the floor. Pain shot up my legs, but before I could turn around, boots connected with my ribs. "Stay down," a voice hissed. Three shadows circled me like wolves. Kicks landed on my side, my back, my shoulder. I curled into a ball, gasping for air, tasting blood at the corner of my mouth. "Wallet!" another voice demanded. I tried to speak, but a kick to the stomach knocked the breath out of me. I felt hands digging into my coat, yanking at my pockets. My wallet was ripped away, then my car keys. Through the chaos, I caught fragments of their voices, low, hurried, speaking Spanish. "Apurate, vámonos." Check his phone. But when a hand grabbed at my pocket, I instinctively tightened my grip around my phone. I don't know how, but in that frenzy I managed to press the side button 5 times fast. Emergency SOS. The phone vibrated in my hand and I croaked out, "Help! Attacked! Port Authority!" before it was smacked away from me. The men must have thought I was finished because suddenly they were gone. Their footsteps faded, replaced only by the ringing in my ears and the pounding of my heartbeat. I stayed curled up, trembling, afraid they might come back. That's when I saw it, a knife lying just a few feet from me. I don't know if it slipped from one of their pockets or if they'd meant to use it. Either way, the sight of that blade made me shiver harder than the cold floor beneath me. Within minutes, though it felt like hours, 2 NYPD officers came rushing in, guns drawn. "You okay?" one shouted. I tried to nod but just groaned. My ribs screamed with every breath. "EMS is on the way. Stay with us, buddy." One of them crouched beside me, checking my pulse, shining a flashlight into my eyes. "What's your name?" "Daniel," I managed to whisper. "They took my wallet." "Keys. You're lucky they didn't take your life," he muttered. The EMTs arrived, strapped me to a stretcher and wheeled me out. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I caught a glimpse of that knife still lying on the floor. The thought that it could have been inside me instead of beside me made me nauseous. The next hours blurred into a carousel of bright lights, x-rays, and questions. A cracked rib, bruises across my chest and arms, a concussion, a detective named Sargent. O'Malley visited me while I was hooked up to an IV. "You said 3 men?" he asked, jotting notes. "Yeah, early 30s maybe. Hoodies. One had a scar on his cheek. They spoke Spanish. Quick, like they were arguing." "Did they have weapons?" I hesitated, then nodded toward the memory. "A knife. Dropped it. Didn't use it, thank God," he scribbled again, his face grim. "We'll pull the security footage from Port Authority. You'll need to come down to the precinct when you're stable to give a full statement." I sighed. "Will you catch them?" His eyes softened. "We'll try. But off the record, these guys know what they're doing. They move fast, they disappear fast. Just be grateful you're walking away." I was discharged the next day, moving gingerly with every step. My wallet, credit cards, driver's license gone. My ribs still screaming. My trust in the city shattered. Kyle visited me a few days later at my apartment in Newark. He brought soup and tried to lighten the mood. "Man, I leave you alone for one night and you go and get mugged? You really can't handle yourself without me, huh?" I managed a weak laugh. "Yeah, thanks for abandoning me for IKEA." But his smile faded as he saw the bruises on my side. "Seriously, though, that's messed up. You could have been killed." I nodded. "I keep thinking about that knife. If one of them had just decided differently." Kyle put a hand on my shoulder. "Don't think like that. You're here. That's what matters." Weeks have passed since that night, but I still flinch when I hear fast footsteps behind me. I still wake up sweating from dreams where faceless men kick me into the ground. No arrests have been made. Sergeant O'Malley keeps me updated, but I can hear the futility in his voice each time we talk. And yet, I can't stop replaying it. The cold tile against my face, the weight of boots against my ribs, the glint of that knife on the floor. People tell me, that's just New York, like it's normal, like being assaulted and robbed is just part of city life. But it shouldn't be. We should be able to enjoy a game, a drink, a walk to the bus without worrying if we'll make it home alive. I still love hockey. I still love the garden. But the city feels different now. Every shadow feels heavier. Every empty corridor makes my chest tighten. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear those words, hissed close to my ear as the first kick landed. "Stay down." I grew up in Queens, New York, in a neighborhood where everyone seemed to know everyone. But that didn't stop me from feeling like an outsider. My name is Kareem Malik, and being Muslim in post-9/11 America was never simple. By the time I reached middle school in 2012, I had already grown a thick skin from hearing names like terrorist, camel jockey, or worse. But two kids in particular, Derek Russo and Anthony Tony Marino, made it their personal mission to torment me. They weren't just bullies, they thrived on humiliation. They shoved me into lockers, tripped me in the hallways, slapped food trays out of my hands in the cafeteria. Once, when the teacher stepped out of class, Derek forced me to the ground while Tony spat on me and whispered, "Your people killed ours." The worst incident came when they dragged me into the bathroom, dunked my head into a toilet, and laughed as I choked on dirty water. I had friends, kids who would post on social media about justice and equality, but when it came to stepping in, they stayed quiet. The hypocrisy stung worse than the bullying. By 2015, I was 15 years old. My parents, immigrants from Pakistan who had built a small grocery store business, thought I was strong enough to handle the bullying, but they didn't know the details. I never wanted them to carry that weight. That December, my family decided to spend the weekend at our vacation house near the Shawangunk Ridge, upstate. The place was simple: wooden floors, a fireplace, surrounded by thick forests that seemed endless. It was meant to be an escape from the chaos of the city. I invited my best friend Jaden Carter, someone I'd known since elementary school. He was the type of friend who never judged me, never asked ignorant questions about my faith, and always had my back. We left Queens around 6 p.m. on a Friday, traffic thick as always, but by 8:30 we rolled into the quiet of the countryside. The house smelled faintly of pine from the woods outside. My parents unpacked while Jaden and I dropped our bags in the guest room. That night, lying on the old creaky bed, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could breathe a little easier. The next morning, Jaden and I had a plan: geocaching. It was something we'd been obsessed with since first grade. To outsiders, it probably sounded silly, finding hidden boxes using GPS coordinates, but for us it was a mix of adventure and childhood nostalgia. "Your parents said 4 hours, right?" Jaden asked as he laced his boots. "Yeah, 4. That's enough time. There's a trail by the waterfall we can hit," I replied, stuffing granola bars into my backpack. We set off around 10 a.m., the air crisp and sharp with winter's edge. The forest felt both peaceful and unsettling, silent except for the crunch of leaves and the occasional call of a crow. We found 3 geocaches within the first hour: a tin box with a plastic dinosaur, a notebook stuffed into a film canister, and a cracked Tupperware with cheap trinkets. By the time we reached a waterfall, we were laughing, out of breath, and enjoying the simple thrill of being kids in the woods. But then, everything shifted. We were tracking the next cache about 4 miles away when I heard footsteps behind us. At first, I thought it might be hikers, but when I turned around, my blood ran cold. Derek Russo and Tony Marino. The same kids who had made my life hell in Queens, standing here in the middle of the woods, smirking like wolves who had cornered their prey. What the hell? The words slipped out before I could stop them. How did you even find us? Derek tilted his head, his grin wide. You thought you could run away from us? Cute. Yeah, Tony added, pulling something from his jacket. My stomach dropped when I realized it was a hunting knife. This time, nobody's around to save your sorry ass. Jaden stepped forward, his voice cracking. Yo, what the hell are you doing out here? This is insane. You followed us? Shut the fuck up, Tony snapped, eyes wild. You don't know shit. Before I could react, Derek lunged at me. He was bigger, stronger. He shoved me so hard I landed on the damp ground the wind knocked out of me. His hand pressed against the back of my neck, forcing me toward the edge of the waterfall. The roar of water filled my ears and the rocks below looked like jagged teeth waiting to tear me apart. You know what you people did, right? Derek hissed, his face close to mine. My uncle died in the towers, and you think you get to live free, laugh, go hiking like nothing happened? Nah. You don't get that I had nothing to do with that. I gasped, panic clawing at my chest. My family's American. I was born here, but his grip only tightened. Meanwhile, Tony had Jaden pinned against a tree, the knife glinting in his hand. Jaden struggled, yelling, "Help! Somebody help us!" I thought I was going to die. I could feel the spray of the waterfall against my face as Derek pushed me closer to the edge. My legs kicked helplessly, trying to gain leverage. And then, a gunshot cracked through the forest. Derek froze. Tony stiffened, knife still raised. We all turned. A man in hunting gear stood about 20 feet away, a rifle raised but pointed toward the sky. His voice was firm, steady. Let them go. Now, for a second, I thought Derek might still shove me over out of spite, but then he let go, stepping back. Tony released Jaden, muttering curses under his breath. The hunter's eyes burned through them. Get the hell out of here before I decide to use this properly. Without another word, Derek and Tony bolted into the trees, disappearing into the shadows. The hunter lowered his rifle and approached us. You boys all right? I was trembling, my knees weak. Jaden spoke for both of us. They tried to kill us. Who were they? The man asked. Bullies, I croaked. From our school, in Queens. They followed us here. I don't even know how the man frowned, shaking his head. That's not normal. The kind of people who'd go that far, those are dangerous kids. They weren't just playing around, they meant it. He offered to walk us back to the house, and we didn't argue. Every crunch of leaves made me fear Derek and Tony would jump out again. But we made it safely to the property, where my parents nearly panicked seeing us escorted by a stranger with a rifle. We explained everything. At first, they didn't believe us, because honestly, who would? But after speaking with the hunter, their faces drained of color. That afternoon, we went to the local police station. The hunter came too, despite risking trouble for firing his gun in a restricted area. He gave his statement, and so did we. The officers listened carefully. One of them, an older guy with graying hair, leaned back and said, "The lengths those kids went to. If what you're saying is true, they weren't just bullies. That was an attempted assault with a deadly weapon, possibly attempted murder." Hearing him say that made my stomach twist. The police said they'd contact our school immediately. The hunter was let off with a warning. We spent the rest of the weekend quietly, but my mind replayed the scene again and again. The grip on my neck, the rush of the waterfall, the look in Derek's eyes. That Monday, before first period, I was called into the principal's office. My parents were already there. So were two police officers. The principal cleared his throat. Kareem, Derek Russo, and Anthony Marino have been expelled effective immediately. There will also be legal consequences, though given their age, it will likely involve juvenile detention. I felt a wave of relief, but it didn't erase the terror I'd felt in that forest. High school after that was calmer. Sure, I still got the occasional slur whispered at me in the hallway, but nobody ever laid a hand on me again. Years later, in 2019, I was walking through Times Square when I saw Derek. He was older, scruffier, walking in the opposite direction. He didn't even notice me. For a moment, I considered stopping him, demanding answers. How did you find us in those woods? Why did you hate me so much? But I didn't. I just kept walking. Even now, nearly a decade later, I sometimes dream of that day at the waterfall, the roar of the water, the weight on my neck, the knife glinting in the cold air. It reminds me that no matter how far you run, hate has a way of following. And that day, it almost killed me. I had just turned 26 when I moved to New York in January of 2011. I still remember how bitter the wind felt that month, how it blew through the cracks of the apartment I had just rented in Murray Hill. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with peeling paint and an ancient radiator that clanged more than it heated. But for me, it was a step into the life I'd always wanted, a chance to prove I wasn't some small-town nobody from Rochester anymore. My name is Daniel Mercer, and this story isn't about success, though it started that way. It's about how easy it is to be seduced by power, how quickly you can give away the one thing you never thought could be taken, yourself. I'd landed a job at Hartman & Row Estates, one of those sleek high-end real estate firms that specialized in ultra-luxury properties. We're not talking brownstones or penthouses. I'm talking private islands, centuries-old estates in Europe, places that looked more like movie sets than homes. On my very first day, whispers ran through the office about a record-breaking deal. A medieval castle in Switzerland sold to some 20-something tech billionaire. I wasn't part of it, of course. I was the new guy, barely trusted to organize paperwork. But the atmosphere was electric, like we were all riding the coattails of the rich and untouchable. The owner himself, Victor Hartman, came out of his glass-walled office that week more than once, cigar smoke trailing him despite the no-smoking signs posted everywhere. He was enormous, not just in size, though his gut strained every custom Italian suit he wore, but in presence. His laugh could silence the room. His glare could peel you apart. On Friday afternoon, as the office buzzed with talk of a celebratory dinner, I assumed I'd be invisible. Just another junior associate they wouldn't even bother acknowledging. But to my surprise, Hartman lumbered into my tiny corner office, closed the door, and looked me over with a smile that showed a gold-capped molar. "You're Mercer, right?" he asked, his voice gravelly. "Yes, sir." He grinned, chewing on whatever cigar stub he had. "Good week?" "It's been great, thank you." "I'm still just trying to keep up." He chuckled. "Keep up, huh? You'll do fine. Tell me something. Ever had salami stuck between your teeth? The kind no floss can reach?" I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. A couple times he dug at his teeth with his pinky and then leaned closer. Annoying as hell, isn't it? But the right tools fix anything. Then he tugged at the cufflink on his shirt and held it out to me. I hesitated but took it. The gold piece was heavy, square, engraved with the letter V, and beneath it, a finely carved scythe. When I looked back up at him, his expression was unreadable. "Beautiful craftsmanship," I said. "Custom," he muttered. "Like all good things." Everything worthwhile in this world is built in secret, boy. Remember that he slipped the cufflink back into place and handed me a thick card embossed with the same scythe symbol. We're celebrating tonight. You'll come. I stared at the card. On the back, in elegant script, was a single word. Myrina. What's this? I asked. The password, he said simply. No password, no entry. By the time work ended, my nerves were shot. I must have read and reread the word Myrina 20 times, trying to figure out what it meant. It sounded old, foreign. Back at my apartment, I showered, shaved, and put on the only decent suit I owned. My stomach twisted with both excitement and dread. This wasn't just dinner. It felt like an initiation into something I couldn't quite name. The address led me to a quiet block near the East River, where a rusted metal door sat almost hidden between two abandoned storefronts. I knocked, and a sliding window scraped open, revealing a pair of sharp, bloodshot eyes. Yes? The man asked. I'm here for the dinner, I said. Password. Myrina. The lock clicked and the door creaked open. Inside was nothing but a narrow staircase plunging down into darkness. The man who opened the door had vanished, as if swallowed by the shadows. The descent felt endless. The air grew colder, damper, as if I were walking into a cavern. When I finally reached the bottom, a wooden door stood waiting. Muffled voices echoed beyond it. I knocked, and silence fell inside. Who is it? A voice demanded. Daniel Mercer, the new associate at Hartman and Rowe. The door opened, and I stepped into a room I will never forget. The walls were stone, the air heavy with the stink of incense and something metallic. Blood, I realized later. Candles flickered on iron stands, casting long shadows, and at the center stood a massive statue of an owl, but twisted, its beak replaced by sharp teeth, its eyes hollow pits, horns jutting from its head. Around it gathered my colleagues, masked in elaborate Venetian disguises, feathers and gold filigree gleaming in the candlelight. At the front stood Hartman, his voice booming behind a long-nosed mask. Welcome, Mercer. Tonight you cross the threshold. I froze. Threshold of what? He handed me a knife, its blade catching the light. Every one of us has given to Myrina. She gives back tenfold. Wealth, power, protection. All she asks is blood. The others murmured in agreement, urging me forward. My heart hammered in my chest. This is some kind of joke, right? I stammered. Hartman removed his mask, his eyes dark and hard. Do I look like I'm joking, kid? The men and women around me began to chant, a low, guttural sound that rattled my bones. I felt hands on my back, pushing me toward the statue. Hartman pressed the knife into my palm. Just a cut. Enough to show loyalty. I don't. Do it, he barked. The room seemed to close in. The chanting grew louder, vibrating in my skull. Against every instinct screaming inside me, I drew the blade across my palm. Blood dripped onto the stone owl's head. And then it happened. The air turned electric, sharp. I felt something, like claws, slide through me, digging, searching. My chest seized. My mind blurred. It was as if something inside me had been ripped loose, torn away. I gasped, stumbling backward. What's happening? Hartman's voice was calm, almost tender. That emptiness you feel? That's the price. You'll never go hungry. You'll never be weak. But the part of you that doubts, that fears, it belongs to her now. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the numbness spreading through me was worse than fear. I felt hollow, detached. The chanting stopped. The room stilled. Hartman smiled. Welcome to the order, Mercer. The years that followed were everything I thought I wanted. I rose fast in the firm, closing deals I never dreamed I'd be trusted with. I bought a loft in Tribeca, drove a car I couldn't even pronounce before I owned it, traveled to places that had only been postcards on my wall as a kid. But I was empty. Laughter felt rehearsed. Food tasted dull. Women, friends, family. It was like I was watching life happen through glass. I went through the motions, but the spark was gone. Sometimes in the quiet of night, I swore I heard the owl's hoot echoing in my head, high and shrill. I tried therapists, priests, even doctors. None of them could explain the numbness. None of them believed me when I said I'd given something away that night underground. It's been over a decade since that night. I'm writing this because I can't take it anymore. I've built everything I thought mattered, but it's worthless. I'm a shell moving through a world that no longer feels real. My soul, or whatever piece of it I lost, never came back. If anyone reads this, understand. There are places in New York that don't exist on maps. Doors that lead to things you don't want to see. If someone hands you a card with a word you can't understand, burn it, run. Because once you give yourself away, you don't get it back. Not for money, not for power, not for anything. I am living proof of that. And if you hear an owl hoot in the dead of night, pray it isn't calling for you. I never liked taking the bus in New York. Not because I thought it was unsafe, though it often was, or because it took longer than the subway. It was more that the bus felt like limbo, like some strange middle ground where the city slowed down but never quite slept. That night, though, I chose the bus out of sheer exhaustion. My name's Daniel Ruiz. I was 28 back then, working at a small accounting firm in Midtown. The work itself wasn't hard, but the office politics drained me every single day. My boss, Mr. Warren, had a talent for making everyone feel replaceable. The man could look at you with his half-smile and convince you you'd done something wrong just by breathing. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I was saving up to quit and focus on my writing. But temporary has a way of turning into forever in this city. That particular evening, January 2013, the sky was a dull sheet of gray. I remember it well because I stood outside the office debating whether to grab the subway or try the M42 crosstown bus. The subway meant noise, crowds, the smell of burnt metal and piss. The bus, well, at least I could close my eyes for a while. I didn't think twice. I swiped my Metro card and stepped onto the nearly empty bus. The first thing I noticed was the smell stale, damp, with something sour underneath. There were fingerprints smeared on the fogged windows, and the cushions of the seats looked damp, like someone had spilled gasoline on them. "Evenin'," I muttered at the driver. He didn't answer. He was an older man, maybe late 60s, with sagging cheeks and a flat cap pulled low. His hands gripped the wheel tight. I figured he was just tired. Who wasn't? I slid into a seat 3 rows back, tossed my bag on the one beside me, and leaned my head against the glass. The bus jolted forward, and soon the city lights blurred into smears of yellow and red. Within minutes, I drifted into a shallow, restless sleep. I woke to the smell of burning flesh. It was so strong that my throat tightened instantly, and I coughed until my chest hurt. The bus rattled along, but something was off. The usual background hum of the city was gone. No car horns, no pedestrians yelling into phones, not even the muffled music that always leaked from passing cars. Just silence. I blinked and looked outside. Nothing. Absolute darkness, as if the city had been swallowed whole. I rubbed my eyes, certain I was just disoriented, but no, the windows framed only pitch-black void. My pulse quickened. What the hell? I leaned forward to see the driver. He was still in his seat, shoulders rigid, staring dead ahead into the darkness. "Hey," I said, my voice rough. "Where are we?" No answer. "Sir? You missed my stop, what's going on?" Still nothing. Then, faintly, I heard him whispering. His lips moved, but the words were guttural, foreign, almost chewed. "Hello?" I pushed myself up, gripping the metal bar. "Are you okay?" Before I could reach him, he snapped open the driver's door, stumbled out, and landed on gravel. I froze gravel. There was no gravel anywhere on my route. "Hey," I yelled. The old man broke into a sprint, arms flailing as he bolted into the blackness. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Stop! What the fuck are you doing?" He turned suddenly. That's when I saw his eyes. Red, glowing like embers. His skin peeled away in strips, hanging loose, and worms squirmed in the gaps of his gums. His teeth looked rotted but sharp when he grinned. "Daniel." His voice cracked like wood thrown onto fire. "Madam's been waiting for you." "Madam's?" I stumbled back. "What? Who the hell are you?" He laughed, wet and gurgling. Then his skin melted in sheets, dripping like candle wax. One eye fell from its socket. Still, he pointed straight at me with a skeletal finger. "You're next on the list, Daniel. No going back." I couldn't move. My legs locked as I watched him turn and run again. Flames engulfed him mid-stride, bright orange fire licking across his body until he disappeared, a shriek echoing into the dark. The bus lights flickered, clicking on and off. The sound burrowed into my skull. I staggered outside. My sneakers crunched on gravel, though there was no road, no city, nothing, just endless black. I shouted, my voice raw. "Help! Somebody!" Only silence answered, heavy and suffocating. Then, faintly, I heard it. Voices. At first a whisper, then a chorus, men, women, children, all screaming the same thing. My name. Daniel. I pressed my palms against my ears, but the voices grew louder, drilling into my skull. Finally, I couldn't take it. I followed the sound. After what felt like miles, a house appeared. An old Victorian structure, rotting and windowless, sitting alone in the void. The smell of decay radiated from it, sharp enough to sting my nose. "Come inside," a woman's voice called softly. I don't know why I obeyed. Maybe I had no choice. My feet carried me through the doorless frame. Instantly, the house transformed. A chandelier glowed overhead, illuminating crimson rugs and narrow hallways that seemed to bend inward. Claustrophobic, oppressive. From the shadows stepped a woman, frail, hunched, with deep rivers of wrinkles etched into her face. Her eyes locked onto mine, and a smile curled across her lips. "Daniel," she whispered. At last, I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" She clapped her hands once, a brittle sound. "Welcome home." "This isn't my home," I snapped, backing up. Her nails long, brown, sickly, dragged against her ragged dress. "Oh, Budded Island. This is where you belong. The one before you failed, and so he burned. Now, you take his place." My chest tightened. "What place?" She leaned close. Her breath stank of rot. "Bring me 3 young hearts. Fresh, or you will burn too." "What the fuck are you talking about?" I shouted. Her hand shot out, claws scraping my arm. Pain seared through me, and suddenly visions. A bleeding moon overhead. Giants feasting on screaming bodies. Beasts with faces split down the middle, shrieking. Their agony filled my head until I thought my skull would crack. "This is where you'll go if you fail," she hissed. "Now go, boy, time runs short." She shoved me. I landed hard on the floor of my apartment. I shot up, drenched in sweat, heart hammering. My tiny studio looked normal. The radiator hissed. Traffic rumbled faintly outside. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, pressing my palms to my eyes. It was a dream. Just a nightmare. I staggered to the kitchen, made coffee with trembling hands, then dragged myself into the shower. The water helped. My breathing slowed until I looked down at my arm. A bruise. Faint, but real. Exactly where she'd scratched me. I froze, and then I heard it. A whisper, curling through the steam. "Time is running out, Daniel. 3 hearts, or the flames." I spun, but no one was there. Only my reflection in the fogged mirror, wide-eyed, shaking. A man already marked. It started almost a year ago, the moment we moved into the apartment. I remember it vividly. My name is Samantha Reed, and my husband Daniel Reed and I had just relocated to New York City from a quiet suburb in Ohio. He got a lucrative offer from a financial firm headquartered in Manhattan. And suddenly, we were living smack in the middle of it all. a two-bedroom apartment perched on the 26th floor of a glass tower in Hell's Kitchen. The place was modern, clean, and honestly, a little too perfect. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of the city's chaotic glow, which I found mesmerizing at first. Every night, it felt surreal, like living inside a movie set. Daniel's personality was magnetic. He made friends at work almost instantly, always smiling, always striking up conversations in elevators, over coffee, during office meetings. By the time we hit our 6th month in the city, we already had a small group we'd hang out with every weekend. There was Becca and Jim, a sweet couple who lived nearby, and Jason and Clara, both Daniel's longtime friends from college. Everyone clicked naturally, and our weekends were filled with dinners, drinks, board games, and laughter. Among them was Mark Bennett. Mark was Daniel's work colleague, a man in his early 32nd. Mark was always jovial, but there was something slightly off about him. He never showed up alone. Instead, he always brought some random friend along, who seemed just as withdrawn and quiet. The group used to joke half in jest that Mark would never let anyone feel excluded. We began calling him the third wheel at every gathering, laughing it off. We never suspected anything was amiss. It was a regular Friday. We had been over Becca and Jim's apartment, enjoying drinks, when we returned home around 11 p.m. I remember feeling unusually exhausted, probably from all the socializing. Daniel flopped onto the couch, scrolling on his phone, while I brushed my teeth and got ready for bed. "Hey babe," Daniel said casually. "Think we should hit the movie tomorrow, maybe something light?" "Yeah," I replied, half asleep. "Sounds perfect." By 11:30 p.m., we were in bed. I remember his steady breathing as I drifted toward sleep, but somewhere around 3:45 a.m., I woke up abruptly. I don't know why. My eyes opened slowly in the darkness. At first I thought it was nothing, a dream or some residual noise from the city. But then I heard it. A faint, irregular breathing. My heart stopped. I froze, staring into the shadows near the corner of our room. It was pitch dark except for the faint ambient glow from the city outside. My eyes tried to adjust. At first, I thought I saw movement, a silhouette perhaps. My breath quickened. My skin felt icy. I didn't move. I couldn't move. Minutes passed. Eventually, the sound faded. I convinced myself I was imagining things. I rolled back over and pretended I never heard it. I wasn't ready to wake Daniel for something that could easily be a product of my imagination. The next evening, I told myself I wouldn't let fear take over. But when 4 a.m. rolled around, the same thing happened. This time, the breathing was unmistakable. Louder, closer. I strained my ears. My pulse raced. I looked around from the bed again. Nothing. Just silence. I whispered to myself, "It's nothing. Just the building, just the pipes." But I knew that wasn't true. My instinct was to wake Daniel, but he was out cold. I hated disturbing him. He had a big presentation the next day. I didn't want him to lose sleep over this. So once again I didn't. The following morning was unbearable. My body ached with tension. Every shadow in the apartment seemed darker. I avoided the bedroom entirely and camped out in the living room couch, half sleeping, half waiting. Then, around 2 p.m., I took a shower to calm myself. When I turned off the water and reached for my towel, I distinctly heard footsteps outside the bathroom door. My heart stopped. I froze, drying my hair with one hand, trying to listen. No sounds after that. I cautiously opened the door. Empty hallway. I tried to laugh it off, convincing myself that the sound came from another floor. Daniel came home at 5:15 p.m. He smiled, kissed me on the forehead. "How was your day?" he asked. "Uneventful," I lied. Later, over dinner, I finally told him everything. The breathing, the footsteps, the paranoia. He chuckled at first, probably trying to ease the tension. "Maybe you're overthinking it," he said lightly, taking a sip of wine. "It's an old building. Could be the pipes or creaky floorboards." But his smile softened as he noticed the fear in my eyes. "If it happens again, wake me immediately," he said, his voice low but steady. We'll check the whole place. I nodded, relieved at least to be heard. By the time 11 p.m. arrived, I was exhausted beyond belief. I wanted nothing more than to fall asleep and forget everything. I don't know how long I was asleep, but at 3:30 a.m., I jolted awake. That unmistakable sound was back. Breathing. Heavy. Deliberate. Right outside our bedroom door. I didn't hesitate this time. "Daniel," I whispered, shaking him gently. I can hear it again." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What? The breathing?" he asked, already tense. "Yeah." I nodded. He listened. "Holy shit," he said, standing up. "I can hear it too." He reached for the light switch. I held my breath as the room illuminated. Nothing. Until... From the closet. Movement. Daniel froze. "Mark?" Daniel called. Before Mark could respond, another sound, a faint creak from under the bed. I screamed, an uncontrollable, panicked scream, as Mark emerged slowly from beneath. His eyes were glazed, distant. "I didn't want to be the third wheel anymore," he muttered. Suddenly, Mark sprinted toward Daniel. The struggle was brutal. Daniel tried to hold him back, but Mark was surprisingly strong. They wrestled inside the closet, crashing into shelves. I bolted for the door, intending to run to the hallway, to get help, to escape the nightmare. But Mark caught me before I could make 2 steps. "Sam," Mark whispered, almost sorrowfully, as if apologizing. I screamed louder than I ever thought possible. In that moment, Daniel broke free from Mark's grip and tackled him to the floor. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed 911, my hands trembling so badly that I could barely hold the phone. 911, "What's your emergency?" The operator's voice came calm, professional. "There's a man in my apartment," I sobbed. "He's attacking my husband. Please hurry." Police arrived within minutes. Mark was restrained, his eyes vacant. "I didn't want to be the third wheel anymore," he repeated over and over. The officer shook his head. "What the hell, man?" one cop asked. Mark just smiled faintly. Later, Daniel had a few scratches and a nasty bruise forming on his temple, but nothing life-threatening. The investigators told us that Mark had been inside our apartment for several days without our knowledge. He had somehow stolen a copy of our key and would break in while we weren't home, even spending entire nights there. Why? No one could say. His mind seemed too fractured to explain. His fixation, so disturbing. The police assured us that Mark didn't intend to physically harm us that night, but the look in his eyes said otherwise. We never returned to that apartment. Now, back in our small hometown, far from New York's towering lights, I still wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, sweating, hearing that awful breathing echoing in my ears, and I can't help but wonder how many nights had he been lying just inches away, watching me, waiting. I never imagined a single night during my college years could haunt me for over a decade. Yet, 13 years later, I still feel that cold knot in my stomach whenever I recall it. I was 19 then, a sophomore at Bayshore College, a small liberal arts school tucked in Suffolk County, Long Island. Freshman year had been brutal. I was shy, awkward, painfully aware of how much I stuck out, but I found a lifeline, a small group of people who welcomed me despite my awkwardness. 7 of us formed an inseparable crew. Adrian, that's me, cautious and rational to a fault. Lucas, tall, loud, brimming with energy. Fearless, or at least he acted like it. Jordan, skeptic of everything, secretly curious about the unknown. Miles, jittery, always telling nervous jokes to mask fear. Tyrell, calm and thoughtful. The voice of reason when chaos threatened to overtake us. Nico, prankster extraordinaire, always pushing boundaries. Samantha, Sam, the only girl in our group, grounded, brave, and somehow keeping the rest of us in check. Together, we devoured horror movies, reenacted scenes from Dracula and Psycho, and stayed up late sharing ghost stories that left us too scared to sleep. Sophomore year, The thrill of fear took a new shape when Sam, sprawled on the dorm couch one evening, twirled her hair and said, "Guys, what if we actually did something scary? Like, go somewhere haunted?" Lucas's eyes lit up. "A ghost hunt? Count me in." Jordan groaned. "You know I don't believe in ghosts, right?" Miles laughed nervously. "Doesn't matter. If Sam wants to do it, I'm following." Nico grinned, already imagining the mischief. "Perfect. Let's find somewhere that'll make us actually scream." Tyrell, quieter than usual, leaned back in his chair. "There's an area near Miller's Hollow. My cousin swears he saw a figure dancing among the trees there. People avoid it at night. Could be exactly what we're looking for." No one argued. Plans were made swiftly. Halloween was still a few weeks away, and the crisp October air promised the perfect backdrop. The day arrived, electric with anticipation. Leaves swirled in amber and rust as we met at the campus parking lot. Lucas's old Jeep groaned under our weight, Sam and I in the back. Lucas behind the wheel. Jordan drove his Honda with Miles, Tyrell, and Nico. The first stretch of road was harmless. Street lights, passing cars, the dull hum of life. But once we left the main roads behind, everything changed. Darkness swallowed us whole. Trees leaned over the road like silent sentinels. The moon, pale and thin, cast long shadows across the asphalt. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves made my heart jump. "Man, it's really dark here," Miles said, voice wavering. "I feel like we're driving into another world," Sam whispered, peering into the black beyond the windshield. Miller's Hollow loomed in our minds. Twisting roads, minimal lights, dense woods. Lucas drove carefully, yet with that reckless thrill in his eyes that only escalated once we were out of sight. 30 minutes in, the road ended abruptly. A massive fallen log blocked our path. "Well, this is unexpected," Lucas muttered. We stepped out, stretching legs stiff from the drive, scanning the thick forest. 2 narrow trails diverged into darkness. Flashlights in hand, we drew lots. I ended up last, following the group down the right trail. The air smelled of damp leaves and decay. Every step sent leaves crunching beneath our shoes. Snaps and rustles came from deeper in the woods. I glanced back, no one else seemed to notice. "Adrian, you good back there?" Sam's voice cut through the tension. "Yeah, just thinking about how dark it is," I said, forcing calm. Miles let out a shaky laugh. "If something jumps out, I'm running, just so you know." Nico smirked. "Same. But we'll survive, right?" I forced myself to believe the sounds were wind or animals, but the pit in my stomach wouldn't let me. Eventually, the trees opened into a vast clearing. My breath caught. It was larger than I expected, like a neglected golf course, bordered by thick woods. And there, it was a house. Dilapidated, abandoned, windows boarded, doors sealed. A white couch peeked through a shattered window, shrouded in plastic, as though someone had left in a hurry years ago. "Let's just check it out," Lucas said, shining his flashlight across the clearing. Sam froze, instincts sharper than any of ours. "Wait. Stop." We all turned. Across the clearing, near the edge of the trees, a figure moved. Tall, pale, unnervingly thin. It wasn't running, it was dancing, twisting and swinging around trees in a rhythm that made my stomach turn. "What the?" Lucas whispered. Jordan squinted. I don't see anything." "Are you messing with me?" "No." Sam hissed. "It's right there." The moment it saw us, the dancing stopped. Its head turned. Then, without hesitation, it charged across the field. "Run!" Lucas yelled. We sprinted, branches scratching faces, the cold air stinging lungs. Jordan shouted, panicked. "What is it? What's happening?" The figure's movements were unnatural, jerky, almost impossible for a human to replicate. My flashlight barely caught its outline, tall, pale, limbs flailing grotesquely. We reached the cars, hearts pounding, doors slammed. Miles's hands shook as he fumbled with keys. Sam asked softly, "Everyone okay?" "I think so," I gasped. "But it was coming for us." We drove back until the glow of civilization felt impossibly comforting. We pulled over, looked at each other. Words felt useless. Whatever we had seen in Miller's Hollow wasn't human. Or at least, not entirely. Weeks passed, yet the memory lingered. Sleep became thin and haunted. Every creak in my dorm room sounded like branches scratching at windows. In class, my mind drifted to that figure. Months later, a local newspaper reported a missing person found wandering near Miller's Hollow, rambling incoherently about the dancer. The description was vague, but the timing, it was too coincidental. We didn't discuss it much, but the chill returned every time Miller's Hollow came up. Years later, we scattered across states. Occasionally, someone would bring it up. Remember Miller's Hollow? Nico would type in the group chat. That really happened, right? Yes. We'd all reply. Even today, I avoid driving near that area. I sometimes dream of the clearing the house, the pale dancing figure, eyes that seem to look straight through me, and always, there's the feeling of being watched, as though it waits for the next foolish souls to wander into its clearing. The strangest thing is, no one else ever reports seeing it. Maybe it only reveals itself to those who wander close enough, curious enough, unafraid enough, or foolish enough. Whatever it was, it remained in the woods. A silent predator. And we were lucky. That night could have ended differently. That night could have ended with one of us never returning. I sometimes think of going back, just once, to see if it's still there. But deep down, I know some doors are better left unopened. Some horrors are meant to be remembered and feared from afar. Miller's Hollow still waits, and it remembers. Isolation. That's the word I'd use to describe that entire experience. My name is Rachel Myers. 3 years ago, I lived in upstate New York, in a small town called Willow Creek, a quiet place most people haven't heard of. The kind of place where the nearest gas station is 15 miles away, and cell service drops to nothing once you pass the town limits. My husband, Greg, had a steady job at a local machine shop, and I worked part-time at the library. Life was simple. Maybe too simple sometimes, but it suited us. I never considered myself the adventurous type. My friend Logan was different. He grew up hiking the Adirondacks, chasing abandoned cabins and hidden waterfalls like a treasure hunter. He was fearless in a way I envied but never wanted to admit. It was Logan who first suggested the hike. "Come on, Rach, you've been cooped up all week. Let's get out of town for a day," he said one Friday morning. His eyes were alive with excitement, as if he knew something I didn't. I was hesitant. "I dunno, Logan. You remember what happened last time we went into those woods near Maple Hill? I swear we got lost for hours," I said, adjusting my thick wool scarf. He laughed, brushing my concerns off. "That was nothing. This trail is marked. Easy to follow. I found it online. We'll be in and out by sunset." I sighed. I'd been feeling restless lately, and something about the way he spoke made it sound impossible to resist. "All right. Fine. But I swear if I see a bear or something, I'm turning around," I said. We left my small apartment just after 8 a.m., driving nearly an hour northwest from Willow Creek. The air was crisp, almost biting, and the sky was overcast with faint wisps of gray clouds. Our destination was a trail called Hemlock Hollow, tucked deep in the forest, hardly visited by tourists or even locals. It promised untouched beauty and solitude. "Are you sure this is the right turn?" I asked, eyeing the GPS app on my phone. Service was already patchy. "Positive," Logan said confidently, glancing over at me with a grin. "Trust me, this is the real deal." The road got worse the deeper we went. Cracked pavement, giving way to dirt tracks and weeds encroaching the path. Abandoned houses, dilapidated and crumbling, appeared at odd intervals, their windows shattered, exteriors covered in mildew and graffiti. "It looks off," I muttered, my voice tight. Logan waved it off. "Old farmhouses, probably haven't been used in decades." We parked the car just beyond what seemed like the last semblance of civilization, near a rusted fence that had been partially torn down. The air was heavy, carrying an earthy scent mixed with the faint metallic tang of decay. We slung our backpacks over our shoulders and started walking. For the first 45 minutes, the trail was serene. Moss covered every rock, towering trees stretched endlessly into the sky, and small birds chirped faintly. The sun played hide-and-seek with the clouds, casting dappled light across the path. I began to relax. "That's a pretty good photo," Logan said, snapping a picture of an old oak tree with his phone. "Thanks," I said, smiling despite myself. Then, as if the woods themselves decided to shift, we stumbled upon something I'll never forget. A bench, except it wasn't just any bench. It was completely destroyed, splintered wood, covered in dirt, stained as if left to rot for years. I stepped closer, eyeing it. "This doesn't look like it belongs here," I said, running my hand along the warped surface. "Why would there be a bench this far in?" "Beats me," Logan replied, already taking pictures. "Maybe someone used to come here for solitude." I mused. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. We moved on, but the strange feeling of being watched began to creep over me. A low prickle at the back of my neck. About 50 yards later, we came to a small chain-link fence, half collapsed, stretching across the trail like a forgotten boundary. "What do you think this is?" I asked. Logan hesitated, pushing a branch aside. "Looks like a compound, or maybe some kind of experiment site," he said, half joking. Behind the fence stood a series of tiny huts, and by tiny, I mean so small they looked built for children or animals. Their walls were patchworks of wood, metal scraps, wire fencing, even old street signs nailed together. Each one seemed more bizarre than the last. Some were completely overgrown. Others leaned precariously. "Come on," Logan said, his tone lighter than he felt. "Let's check it out." We crossed the fence, trying not to disturb the scene too much. The smell was overpowering, a mix of mildew, rust, and something I couldn't quite place. Inside the first hut, I saw an old wooden chair, its surface cracked and worn. Lockers rusted shut. Moss crept along the floorboards, and in one corner, half buried in dirt, lay a broken porcelain doll, its face eerily intact. "This is weird," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The deeper we went, the stranger it became. Two massive black tubes, standing like monolithic pillars, loomed ahead. They looked industrial, but their purpose was indecipherable. I shivered. "Why the hell would someone build this?" I asked. Logan didn't respond, too busy filming with his phone. As we pushed further, dozens more huts emerged, arranged in no apparent order. Then we came across the centerpiece, a giant pile of debris. Telephone poles lay smashed, their wires hanging like dead vines. Light switches were embedded randomly in the wood, some dangling, some covered in dirt. "It's like they were trying to rig power," Logan murmured. I nodded, heart sinking. "But no way anyone's lived here in decades. This place is ancient." We examined the huts in detail. Statues of Santa Claus stood in every corner, half buried in weeds, each one more grotesque than the last. Religious icons mingled with carnival decorations, clown masks, faded streamers, old merry-go-round pieces. One hut stood out, larger than the others, maybe the size of a small shed, with an oil drum hollowed out on the far side. Inside, it was cluttered with old religious statues, some missing limbs, and ancient-looking circus props, a small wooden trapeze, faded posters of sideshow acts, and a cracked mirror covered in grime. "It feels sacrilegious," I whispered. "We should get out," Logan said, finally sounding serious. But just as we turned to leave, a noise froze us in place. Shuffling. It came from within the compound, slow and deliberate, as if something or someone was moving through the debris. "Did you hear that?" I asked, barely able to breathe. Logan nodded, his face pale. "It's probably a deer," he said, though neither of us believed it. We didn't wait to find out. We ran. Our steps pounded the dirt trail as branches whipped past us, and my lungs burned. Every instinct screamed to keep moving. The sound of shuffling didn't follow us, but I was certain of it. Every second was pure adrenaline. When we reached the car, still panting, headlights from an unmarked police vehicle flooded the clearing. "Evening," a gruff officer said, stepping out. "What the hell are you two doing way out here?" he asked, squinting at us. We were hiking," Logan explained, trying to sound calm. "Exploring Hemlock Hollow Trail. We got a call about some kids trespassing and being up to no good," the officer said flatly. "You've got pictures?" he asked. We showed him our photos. His face remained unreadable. "Looks like junk," he said dismissively. "Get in your car. Leave now. Don't come back." There was no point arguing. I drove us back to Willow Creek, both of us silent. The image of those headless mannequins seared into my mind. I've never gone back. Some nights, I still wonder, what was that place? What had we stumbled upon?